Welcome into the Illini Inquirer podcast. It is Jeremy Werner, Joey Wagner, and it is time for our position previews here on the Illini Inquirer podcast. If you're a VIP member, it's only 50% off to do so now. So save $60 on that or sign up for a month for just $1. And this is a great month to do that. We had our position primers about a month ago and kind of had time to marinate on that, talk to the coaches a little bit more. So we'll have a little bit more in depth, getting to see these guys a little bit in practice. Not much open so far. We're hoping to get a fully open practice next week when BTN is in town. But Brett Bielema gives us a glimpse of these guys in position drills. But we figured today is a good time to start the position previews and two positions we know a lot about. We don't need to see practice really to know a lot about the quarterbacks and the running backs on this roster. And two positions we feel should be a strength, Joey, especially with the starters. There are more questions behind those starters, but the backfield for Illinois does feel like a strength going into this year.
Yeah, it does. And health, you're relying on that. Obviously, anytime you're talking about a quarterback, no team in college football can lose its quarterbacks. That one goes without saying. And the running backs, I feel like we've talked about it a lot. We kind of teased it's a conversation to get into later when we talk about the running backs. They've had injury issues in their past, right? And I think that's a really big storyline coming in. But as we talked about on Monday, what if there aren't? And I think that's something to really dive into a little bit today.
All right, let's talk about quarterbacks. Let's start this off as Illinois returns one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten in Luke Altmyer. And that was not a given going into last year that he would take that leap into that top tier or just after the top tier of Dylan Gabriel, Drew Aller, however you want to put it. But he took a huge leap in his second year under Barry Lunny as the play caller here at Illinois. His efficiency, Joey, went up from 131 to 144. That's the second best all time for a season for Illinois. And that's kind of with a caveat because the guy ahead of him was John Paddock, who started basically 4 games last year. So the fourth highest, by the way, is Tommy DeVito 2 years ago. So Barry Lunny is doing some work with efficiency.
Are you just reading Barry Lunny's resume? Is that what you're doing here?
Giving a pretty good resume for Barry Lunny Jr. for any of the haters out there. But Luke's completion rate actually went down 4 points, but his yards per attempt went up from 7 to 7.8. His touchdown rate up from 4.8 to 6.3. Most importantly, Joey, the interception rate went down from 3.7 to 1.7. And that completion rate can kind of be explained a little bit. They went more downfield, more throws of 10 yards down the field, 38% of his attempts last year were 10 yards down the field. The year prior, it was under 30%. So the Illini passing attack went more through that slot receiver with his Isaiah Williams in 2023, more downfield with Pat Bryant and Zachary Franklin last year. But the biggest thing is Luke Altmyer. I don't have the numbers for every other quarterback in the country. I don't think there's a long list of guys who are better in the clutch, the fourth quarter and beyond than Luke Altmyer. His late game stats were just simply amazing, Joey. In the fourth quarter and overtime of the Illini's 6 one-score games, Altmyer completed 31 of 53 passes for 518 yards. That's 9.8 yards per attempt, which is elite. 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions for an absurdly good passer rating of 171.7. Also rushed for 170 yards and 2 touchdowns on 19 carries. They didn't get sacked. So pretty good year for Luke Altmyer. Anything on that? Because he has now set the bar to where he has a competitive advantage in every game, most games for Illinois going in at the quarterback position. Last year, Oregon maybe was the one you didn't feel he could be that competitive advantage, but he outplayed guys like Dylan Raiola in the fourth quarter. Max Brosmer was pretty good against Illinois. I thought Luke Altmyer was still pretty good in that game. But even in a game against Lenora Sellers, it felt like Luke Altmyer was a little bit more efficient, a little bit better. I thought the trenches and the running game obviously did well in that game. But you go into every game feeling like your quarterback gives you a chance to win.
Yeah, that's what playoff teams have, right? Teams that are in contention for the college football playoff. Illinois has put itself in that conversation. A lot of it's on the back of Luke Altmyer, a guy that you know can make those plays in the clutch, a guy that you know can make those early game throws to get your offense going and understands the system he's in and the system. And Barry Lunny understands Luke Altmyer. I think there's a lot of really good stuff there with the continuity. And he took that jump last year. We talked about 2023. It feels weird at this point, just given what he did a year ago, going back to 2023. But the jump that he made was really, really meaningful, and a jump that Illinois obviously thought he had in him when they recruited him. He's got plenty of talent. I mean, that's obviously goes without saying. But now, what's that jump look like in 2025? Because there is a jump still to be had. It's why he's back in college football. It's why he's, within a system that you feel like he can take another, maybe that's uptick in completion percentage. Maybe that's, I don't really know that you can do much better in the clutch, Jeremy, but maybe that's just a little bit more here or there. We'll get into what he needs to improve on. But yeah, you got a guy. And you look around the Big Ten, and it's kind of a short list of proven guys, right? There's a lot of talent at the quarterback position in the Big Ten, and the heavy hitters in the conference have those players. But you look at proven returning talent, Luke Altmyer, Drew Aller, I think Dylan Raiola is in that conversation. Damon Williams, right, at Washington. But, man, Luke Altmyer is pretty close to, if not at the top of that list. And I think you could have reasonable arguments to put him at the top of that list.
When you go proven guys, right? Because Dante Moore's got a world of talent at Oregon. Julian Sand was a 5-star prospect. Damon Williams at Washington, really, really talented player. Aidan Childs at Michigan State, right?
Bryce Underwood.
Yeah, there's really, really talented quarterbacks in the Big Ten. When you go floor of what we've already seen, Drew Aller, Luke Altmyer, Francisco Mendoza, who's done it at the G5 level, or Cal, sorry, which feels like G5 now, but it's in the ACC. There's some really good quarterbacks, but Luke is in that top group. He belongs to be in that top group. He's deserving of that. So while there's some exciting transfers in, whether it is Mendoza or Gronowski at Iowa, like it's not going to take long for me to select Luke Altmyer in a draft of Big Ten quarterbacks. And I think Drew Aller has all the looks of these things, but like Luke Altmyer showed up in some pretty dang big games. And I think you could make an argument, if you want to, the biased argument that maybe you would take Luke Altmyer here, though Drew Aller's a top NFL prospect for a reason. And Altmyer is an NFL prospect at quarterback. Like, let's not overlook that Illinois has one of those guys going into a season. It's been a very long time since Illinois has had one of those guys. DeVito had a lot to prove to get there, right? To get to the NFL. And kudos to him and to Illinois and Barry Lunny for getting him there. But Kurt Kittner, Wes Lunt was he's got a strong enough arm, but like, was he dynamic enough? It's been a while since Illinois has had that kind of player at quarterback. And it's one of the biggest reasons you have such high expectations is because you have a guy like that at quarterback, and that he didn't go to Tennessee. He didn't go to another SEC program. You got that guy back that other programs wanted.
Yeah, you know what I think we've kind of learned this offseason? The most important thing about Illinois having that guy at quarterback, that guy knows it. And I think that is a change of Luke Altmyer in 2023. We've talked about it a lot, but there is something to be said about the confidence and the bravado and the way that he carries himself and the things that, like, that was it feels like outside of DeVito, that's been kind of a talking point for Illinois quarterbacks since as long as I've been on the beat, right? A.J. Bush had it. I think that much is clear, but that was something we talked about with Brandon Peters a lot. It's something we talked about with Luke Altmyer in 2023
Wes Lunt.
A lot. Wes Lunt, like Luke Altmyer knows it. And I think that when you know it and you got the talent, that's where I think people get excited about what Luke Altmyer can do. And yeah, I mean, in the close game, Brett Bielema plays within the margins. We know that. We know that games are going to be pretty close in the fourth quarter with Brett Bielema as the head coach. Ideally, maybe for Illinois, they'd have fewer this season where you don't have to rely on some of those close game heroics, but you want that guy at quarterback, and Luke Altmyer's proven that he can handle that. So, yeah, I think his jump can be – I'm looking at his stats, Jeremy, and I know we'll get into this a little bit. I might be getting ahead of myself. Threw for 2,700 yards last season, 22 touchdowns. What's the jump look like, right? Yeah. Because I think we've got to be real within the confines of what this is, and I think Illinois would really like to run the ball better than it has the last two seasons. But statistically, what's that look like for him?
Yeah. It feels like to me, it's going to be on the margins for Luke Altmyer. Like, I don't know if the stat line is going to look all that different. So let's dive into that. Big question. How does Luke Altmyer improve? Like, what is the number one thing that you think Luke Altmyer has to do to take another leap, Joey?
get the ball out quicker. Get the ball out, not hold on to it as long. Like we were talking about this before we came on air, Jeremy, but quarterback time to throw is a double-edged sword because on the one hand, you want your offensive line to give your quarterback a ton of time. I know you've got stats that'll back up a little bit what I'm saying here. But the other hand, and you see it really with the eye test, it's like, hey, you need to get rid of this thing because pressure comes. And Luke Altmyer, when he's been hit, he's had some fumbling issues in the course of his career. So you don't want to leave that open to taking the one, you don't want your quarterback taking big hits, and two, you don't want him to fumble the football. So getting rid of the ball, being more decisive, some of that's comfort, right? I think it improved a lot last season compared to what it was in 2023. But be decisive about what you want to do, be quick, be intentional about what you want to do, and let your playmakers go to work because we do like the talent at wide receiver, even though a lot of it is still largely unproven.
Yeah, Luke Altmyer had 11 fumbles last year. His sack rate was still incredibly high. Of course, offensive line play has something to do with that, but I would say, and looking at the numbers, I remember at one point PFF said that Luke Altmyer was responsible for about 9 of the sacks last year, which was about 20%. I agree with that. Just by the eye test, and watching the film every week, you can see that there are times that's on Luke Altmyer. Like he had the ball for 4 or 5 seconds. You got to get rid of the ball. So I agree with that. The sack rate for Illinois was 110th in the country last year. The year prior was 113th, right under 9%. That's way too high. You got to stop those negative plays. And then to have 11 fumbles, he's got to get stronger with the ball. He's got to get 2 hands on it. He has gotten physically stronger, which I like. He made the comment of like, I want to put some pain on people. Barry Lunny quickly said, I don't know if I need to see him doing that. Like he has learned a lot about sliding, taking care of his body. He is the most important player on the team. He does not need to prove his toughness, right? Now, can Luke Altmyer be more of an option on quarterback sneaks, which we saw a little bit more of last year? That could be very important for Illinois. I still would rather have Kaden Feagin or Jordan Anderson take the ball on those downs and just plow ahead. But to have a quarterback that can get that yard like Tommy DeVito did is important. And Luke showed some of that last year. But yeah, I do think it's the completion rate. It's the consistency quarters 1 through 3. And he just plays better, it feels like, when they are going up tempo. Can he play better when they're slowing it down a little bit? When they're running the ball and they have a 14-0 lead, like can he just be a little bit more efficient? Because there's something about when the game speeds up for Luke and the wide receivers, they played better last year. That 2-minute drill, they were just unbelievable. Can he play a little bit better when you're playing on schedule, playing a little slower? Those are questions for me, but these are very marginal questions, right? But they can make the difference in these games. Fumbles, could have cost you against Purdue, right? 2 years ago, could have cost you in a game. So those little things I think are what's going to make him either an NFL flyer late in the draft or an undrafted free agent or a guy we could be talking about is a day 2 pick, right? At the position. So I feel confident he'll get there. And I love that he and Barry Lunny are working together for a 3rd year so they can dive into football 500 level stuff at the college quarterback level.
Yeah, to back up your point, Luke Altmyer, according to PFF, was responsible for 5 sacks last season, which is really second most in the Big Ten behind 3 guys, Will Rogers, Curtis Rourke, Ethan Garber, tied for first, and Ethan Kelly, McManus, and Mac Brosmer also 5. So that's the point. You got to get rid of the ball. But yeah, we're in the big picture, we're talking about the nuances that take a quarterback from good and productive to can lead you to where you want to go. And I think that is the difference when we've talked about Illinois quarterbacks over the last 10 years, what Luke Altmyer brings to the table. Like this isn't like, man, you got to take your completion percentage to something that's respectable. You've got to not put the ball in harm's way so often. That's been the problem. And it's a problem for college. Like you want to make life hard on college quarterbacks and make them make some of those tough decisions. We're talking about Luke Altmyer really elevating his game to a really, really strong, meaningful level and leading this team into the postseason. So it sounds nitpicky and it sounds like we're kind of in the weeds on it, but when you have when you have a 3rd-year quarterback who has laid out expectations for himself with his play, he's not said these expectations, but his play has laid out expectations. Now you're getting into get rid of the ball a little bit fast because that helps your offensive line, right? I mean, your offensive line starts, you start getting sacked and those numbers start to ramp up. Very few people are saying, man, that Luke Altmyer's got to get rid of it. It's can this offensive line get it figured out for this guy, right? Like that's what it is. You don't want your offensive line feeling like they've let you down and given up a lot of sacks. Some of it they have, and the offensive line has to play better early in the season, but some of that's on the quarterback too.
The other thing that I think Luke Altmyer needs to do, and I don't think we're going to be having the conversation of whether he's a team captain or not. I don't think that's going to be the case this year. He's a leader, whether it's by example, just being really good at quarterback. But I do think, he has stepped up his game there. He does need to lift up this wide receiver group.
Yes.
Right? Like Isaiah Williams was an established wide receiver. Pat Bryant was pretty much a somewhat established receiver. They took it to a different level, but he doesn't have a guy outside of Hudson Clement who hasn't played with him barely at all heading into training camp. Like, he needs to help lift those guys and create that confidence that we see out of Luke right now. And he talked about that in the podcast a few weeks ago, is he has to help bring that confidence out of Malik Elsie, out of Justin Bullock, out of Hudson Clement, Hank Beatty, Colin Dixon, because these guys have had flashes of it, but now you have to count on them consistently to make the plays that Zachary Franklin and Pat Bryant did last year. So that might be one of his biggest tasks, is getting the most out of those guys and making them feel like he trusts them and keeping their confidence up, even if they have some growing pains early in the season.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We don't mean over the course of the entire season can you pull wide receivers. It's early on. Can you help guys who largely have had limited roles and within the Illinois offense, or even making a jump to Illinois in the case of Justin Bowick from Ball State, Hudson Clement getting used to a new system? Can you help those guys feel like the transition process isn't steep, or that the kind of establishing process, if you're a Malik Elsie, if you're really still Colin Dixon, Hank Beatty as the alpha go-to guy, can you help them feel a little more comfortable in that role as a quarterback? And there's going to be some growing pains, I would imagine, in that regard. But that's where Luke Altmyer, confident leader quarterback, comes in and, hey, keep this thing going. You're coming right back to you type deal, because there's a lot of talent in that room. It's on Justin Stepp, it's on the receivers, and in some ways it's on Luke Altmyer to help get those guys going at full speed.
The plan would be Friday to do our wide receiver tight end podcast, which might be the most interesting one we do the entire time. Of course, the trenches should be the number one podcast people listen to.
Yeah,
but
book 3 hours of your day for that one. Jeremy's got some words.
Got some deep dives to get into. Wide receiver tight ends is certainly one of the biggest, so we'll dive more into that. But if there's a reason you think Luke Altmyer's season would be a decrease, it's because of the wide receiver changes. I mean, you have two guys that are in the NFL right now. Pat Bryant sounds like he's going to start for the Denver Broncos, right? For Sean Payton, Bo Nix, who they have visions of winning the AFC West this year, and realistically. And Zachary Franklin's in the camp with the Raiders right now. So that's a huge storyline going into this year is how he connects with these guys. And that's why training camp is so important for these guys.
Which that comes back to our original point, and like that stat line, right? Like, what does that look like? 'Cause I think you can improve as a quarterback without going from 2,700 to 3,000 yards. One, as you mentioned, you got to replace 2 NFL camp wide receivers and one guy who's on the path to starting in the NFL. And the other side of it, and I think this is the point that I don't want to get lost on, and probably translates their transitions into our next topic. They want to run the ball.
Yeah.
And if they're healthy, when the offensive line comes out to a fast start, they should be able to do that better. And if you're running the ball better and more often, then you really don't need Luke Altmyer to be a 3,000-yard guy. You would like it, right? You would like your offense to be so good that you're running the ball well and Luke Altmyer's throwing it all over. But if you're looking at the stat line, you can have a pretty good offense without a jump to 3,000. Maybe it's 2,800. Maybe it's 2,600. If there's, there's a couple standard deviations away from where he was last year, 2,700 is probably the ballpark, right? I mean, that's good quarterback play with a little bit of wiggle room on each end.
Yeah, for me, it'd be more about like, can you be the guy you were in the fourth quarter, in the first and second quarter, so you can run the ball in the second half and just dominate teams, right? Like that'd be the question for me. Like that could be the step forward. Is he had an efficiency of 170 in the fourth quarter of these one-score games. That means he was probably like 130s in the first 3 quarters. So that's good. That's solid, but that's not what he became like late in these games that made the difference for them. So can he be more efficient there? All right, let's dive into what's behind Luke Altmyer. And I think the major question is, who is the backup for 2025, Joey? Because you got to prepare for a post Luke Altmyer world if he gets injured this year, or obviously with next year, because Luke Altmyer is not going to be here any year. So I kind of combine these two of who's the backup and who is most likely to enter 2026 season as the starter. So go with where you want to here.
I think Ethan Hampton is the backup this season. If Luke Alt, we've been rewatching The Sopranos, so Tony Soprano's like, God forbid, like if Luke Altmyer is out for
Derek Burson at the Sports Information, if we are so fortunate.
This would be unfortunate. If Luke Altmyer is out for an extended period of time, do you turn it over to Carson Boyd? And by an extended period of time, we're talking 5+ games, I would think, right? If that's the case, you say, hey, Carson Boyd, you're our guy in the immediate future. Go and get those reps. But I think if you need a Tommy DeVito against Iowa, right? He goes out, Art Sikowski comes in. If you need a game, a John Paddock against Minnesota, you probably go with Ethan Hampton, who is older. He's got the experience. He's gone into, can beat that horse to death with going into Notre Dame and winning, but he did that, right? So I think in the intermediate, if it's a couple games, if it's a drive or two, it's Ethan Hampton. But then we get into 2026, and I don't know if you have anything you want to add on the backup quarterback.
I just want to talk about Hampton because Bielema kind of mentioned on the podcast we did at Las Vegas, Carson Boyd, that backup battle. I'm interested to see. I think that's him just kind of throwing that carrot in front of Carson, like go try to win this. Like you can do it. You have the talent. I think Ethan Hampton was brought here for a reason. And when we talked to Barry Lunny about adding him when they did in the winter, but also now, he just talks about the experience and what that means for him and the comfort of that. I mean, this guy who started 13 games at Northern Illinois, the numbers kind of look like Paddock, 58% completion rate, 2,600 yards, 21 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. Last year, 58% completion, 1,600 yards, 12 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Nothing that's going to like blow your socks off. And I don't know if there's reason he's a MAC quarterback, right? And it took him 4 years to become a starter in the MAC. The talent level isn't insane, but he's been in these games. He's done it before. Like when he goes into the game, he's not going to freak out if he's playing, on the road at Purdue or something like that, because he's played on the road at Notre Dame. He's played on the road at a few other Power 4 schools, and he's won at a school like Notre Dame. Now, the way you play with Ethan Hampton is way different, I think, than Altmyer. Hampton's the biggest quarterback in the Illinois room, by the way. He's 6'3", 220 pounds. He can run it really well. I think you're going to run more. You're going to be a running football team. He doesn't have the arm that Luke Altmyer does, but it's not a bad arm. He is smart. He knows where to go. He can get the ball out quick. But Carson Boyd's just this uber talented kid who just happens to be in a 5'11" body, 185, 190 pounds. But I think he's got the best velocity on the ball of the backup quarterbacks. He's an unbelievable athlete. So I think he's got a chance to really compete for the 2026 job. I just really struggle to think if Luke Altmyer got hurt against a Big Ten or Power 4 opponent, that they're just going to throw Carson Boyd to the Wolves when he's never done it before. Sure, I'd love to get him a series against one of these teams, but you got to get Ethan Hampton some snaps too. Ethan Hampton's a guy you feel like can go into a game, your defense and running game, and Ethan just making the right play, game managing, as he likes to call himself, a game manager. That's the guy you put in the game.
Yeah, again, unless it's something very long term and you kind of have to wonder where your season is at that point. But yeah, in the short term, I think it's Ethan Hampton. And I think he can go in there and be what backups. You want a serviceable backup, a guy who you're not going to watch the game spiral because you put him in there. And I think Ethan Hampton can do that. So it's him. Now you get into 26, there's like a lot of what ifs here, right? Because I think Carson Boyd's got a ton of talent. Guy they're obviously very excited about. If you're coming off the season you're coming off of, they think they could be coming off of, though, it means your quarterback's probably been pretty good, and it means you probably got a pretty good quarterback sell. Now, do you go in and get a guy with 1 or 2 years of eligibility who maybe isn't your Luke Altmyer, Tommy DeVito, no doubt guy, a guy who would compete with Carson Boyd? Yeah, maybe. Maybe you should go get a guy who's who's done it at a high level, and you've got some money to burn on a quarterback who wants to be within your system and take that level. So I think it's a long-winded way of saying Carson Boyd or TBD transfer, because I just think the pitch could potentially be too good to not get in the portal and flirt around with the quarterback.
Yeah, and maybe it's a guy who's a little less proven, and it's a guy who's maybe even with Carson, but maybe it's kind of like a Luke Altmyer type. Luke barely had played in college, but had the pedigree. I just don't think when you're at Illinois and you hope you have a great season here, and if Luke Altmyer does and he gets drafted or whatever, you don't want to just give up on a season to develop a quarterback. You don't have to do that anymore. So I would want some competition. Ethan Hampton does have an extra year of eligibility if he wants it. I just want a higher ceiling at quarterback. It's not nothing against Ethan Hampton. I just feel like he is more of a game manager. You're a little bit limited. You want a playmaking quarterback, and I think Boyd could be that. But yes, I think I'd be surprised if they just said, yeah, we're good. Right.
Oh, yeah.
Let's say like Carson Boyd has passed up Trey Petty on the depth chart. That is pretty clear through the spring. So we'll have to see if Trey can respond during training camp or whatever it is. But yeah, I would expect it's going to be Boyd and probably a transfer competing it out next year because Illinois is in a really good spot in that room. Like Michael Clayton's coming in. They're very excited about him as well. And obviously Camden Lapati after that, but you don't have to rebuild, right? And, your job as Brett Bielema is not to just make sure Carson Boyd's a starter at some point. It's to make sure my team's a winning team. And if that takes going to get a transfer quarterback, you go and do it.
Yeah, you don't want to come off potentially back-to-back double-digit win seasons and say, you know what, big picture here, we want to. Now, if Carson Boyd's the best quarterback, Carson Boyd's the best quarterback, right? And if he's got all the talent in the world, but you don't have to sacrifice putting out a redshirt freshman just for the sake of it, especially if your pitch is what you think it could be. Because if Illinois has a good season, Luke Altmyer's had a good season. There's really not one without the other there.
And if they didn't go get a transfer quarterback, boy, that'd be a huge kind of just statement about what they think of Carson Boyd, right? If they didn't go get a guy. So that'd be the silver lining of that.
To me, 2027 quarterback is where I have a ton of interest. Like, I don't want to skip 2026. I feel like that's pretty cut and dry.
Yeah.
2027, it's like, okay, now what? And I think that's a really fun thing to talk about.
Yeah, Lapati comes in. Maybe you have a transfer that's been sitting there for a year. That'd be really interesting. All right. Most interesting guy in this room is Dashawn Newton, who just arrived. Boy, he's an impressive looking athlete. 6 foot, 220 pounds. Really good runner, really good high school quarterback. He is going to start his career as a quarterback. He's developing. He's getting some reps in. Barry Lundy's really done. I've watched some drills. He's really kind of mentored one-on-one Dashawn Newton at times. So they are going to give him a shot at this position. But it is hard, right? I'm trying not to take anything away from Dashawn because he wants to be a quarterback, and he's going to be a quarterback, and people around him want him to try and be a quarterback. He can play so many positions, though. I can see him as a running back that gives Illinois a bigger, stronger option, something that we will talk about they kind of lack outside of Kaden Feagin now after Josh McCray leaves. He's a really good defensive player. Surprise, he's Johnny Newton's brother. Like, he could play linebacker at times. We see him returning punts during practice right now, doing a quarterback, a red jersey, is going back there and shagging punts. I don't know if I have ever seen that. Like, even when Isaiah Williams was a quarterback, they never did that. And he's a guy that I think could be on special teams coverage if they really wanted him to. Just a fascinating football player, Dashawn Newton.
Yeah, a lot of options for him, right? And he is, you're right, he's going to get the chance to come in at quarterback. But when you see him on punt return, on punt coverage, and the little bit of time we get to see, you do the Windhorse meme, right? Because it's like, this is not Carson Boyd's not back on punt coverage. Trey Petty's not back there. So I think that's, you do have to look at that and wonder, okay, what's long term here? And hey, listen,
the only more shocking returner I've ever seen is Caleb Griffin.
Yeah.
Back there, and he actually did it in games.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, somewhere Caleb Griffin's like, hey, wait a minute, I was a kicker returner punts. Can we cool it off here a little bit? But I do want to say, like, credit to Dashawn Newton too for saying, yeah, I'll go do that. I'm good to be the random orange jersey on punt coverage and punt return. Like, yeah, I'm willing to give that a shot. We've talked about, this isn't the first time we've ever talked about where Dashawn Newton is going to be long term at Illinois, I think he could be a good running back. I think he could be a good weak side linebacker. I think that there are options for him beyond quarterback. And it's just a matter of, does he see a path forward with himself at quarterback at Illinois, and give him the chance to prove that he does and prove that he can. And then you kind of go from there. Isaiah Williams was a quarterback in spring ball when Brett Bielema got to town. Like, it's not unheard of to see, after a semester, 2 semesters, 3 semesters, a switch. And maybe that won't happen. Maybe he'll come out there and show that he can be a quarterback. And Illinois, it's given him the opportunity to do that. But there are options with him. And I think that is so interesting because physically he is an impressive kid.
Yeah.
And he has physical skills that would lead us to have this conversation, that he can be playing at a different position on either side of the ball. And when you're talking about a quarterback, like, that's impressive, right? To talk about a quarterback who can be a defensive player as well.
All right. Are we ready to turn to running backs here?
I think so.
All right. Let's dive into it because it's interesting. It feels like from the outside, people who talk about Illinois nationally that really haven't watched them a lot, like, they still kind of think of Brett Bielema as the run the football first guy. When Illinois has become it's a balanced attack, but it is, passing has been their strength the last couple years for sure, since Chase Brown has left. The last 2 years, the running game, 2 years ago wasn't that good. 1,245 yards over 12 games. That's not great. That's not a great rushing attack. Their leading rusher was 567 yards, Reggie Love. Last year, the rushing attack was much better, 1,700 yards over 13 games. It was kind of a three-headed attack. Obviously, Josh McCray led him with 609 yards. Aidan Laughery right behind that. Kaden Feagin would have topped that if he would have been healthy for the entire year. But they did take a step forward with the rushing attack, with the offensive line, with more talent that kind of emerged, the younger guys on this group, and Josh McCray kind of resuscitating his career. But this hasn't been the Bielema level rushing attacks from the past, whether it was Arkansas, if you want to talk about more the modern style of offense he has done, or even year one when they had to lean on the rushing attacks. The passing attack wasn't that great yet. Year 1 and 2, they ran for 2,100 yards both those years. Passing attack was awful in 2021, much better in 2022, and Chase Brown was just an absolute stud. So just wondering, Joey, do they get back to being one of the best Big Ten rushing attacks, or is it more just solid and very complementary to a good passing attack?
It's a good question. Before I get to that, I'm just going through like their team leader in yards during Brett Bielema's tenure. He has had only 3 times in his career he's had a back not rush for 1,000 yards. 2 of them have been the last 2 seasons, and I think some of that is the evolution of the passing attack, and that is a good passing attack in the Big Ten. I don't know if they're going to have 1,000-yard guys this season. I'm eventually getting to where you are here. But they ran for his running back group 1,700 yards last season. That feels like that can go up. Whether it's Aidan Laughery and Kaden or Kaden Feagin hitting 1,000 yards, I don't know. But if you have a couple 800-yard guys and you throw Ca'Lil Valentine in there, I can see this being definitely a top half of the Big Ten rushing attack. Now, do we put them in the 4 through 6 range, which is, I think, probably just given what you have at quarterback, probably about where I would cap the ceiling for this group? Maybe, but we're talking health. That's been what we've talked about with this running back room for the last since the season ended, right? So if healthy, I think they could be somewhere ranked in that 4 through 6 as a rushing attack. They got to be healthy to do it.
Well, and you had this in your position primer. Illinois running backs averaged 5.13 yards per carry last season. That was the second highest during Bielema's tenure, behind his first year here, where they had to run the ball so much, and it was a really good rushing attack. The passing attack was just atrocious. So you had Luke Altmyer to the running attack too, right? Like we didn't talk enough about him as a runner that we just had. Like, he was a clutch runner as well, but some huge runs. He's a breakaway threat. At times, I feel like they could lean into that more, but you want to minimize injury risk, of course. So Altmyer is a big part of that rushing attack that as a team can get you over the 2,000-yard mark for a season, but they were more efficient on the ground last year. Offensive line playing well late in the season certainly helped that. But so with the emergence of Aidan Laughery and Josh McCray. So McCray obviously was a loss, and we certainly, with him gone, have to talk about Aidan Laughery's injury history, which has been more nagging injuries that have limited him more than kept him out. But Kaden Feagin has had catastrophic injuries, a shoulder injury that ended his season just as it was really taking off his freshman year. And then last year's hip injury right after he had two really good games against Big Ten opponents. He has that hip injury during the bye week and is out for the season. Both these guys are fully healthy right now, full go. So we know that is a caveat of all of this, Joey. But I want to form the question this way. How good can fully healthy Aidan Laughery and Kaden Feagin be as a duo? Because that we got to talk about because they are very talented backs.
Yeah, those two could put you in the top 4, 5, 6 of the Big Ten in rushing. That, and we talked about this on Monday and kind of alluded to it earlier. All we've done is talked about, man, what if they get hurt? What if they get hurt? What if they don't get hurt? Kaden Feagin is impressive. We joked, like Brett Bielema is downright giddy when he talks about him. And Aidan Laughery is a guy that, because Kaden Feagin is 6'4", 260 pounds, we gravitate towards talking about him. Aidan Laughery had a hell of a good close to the end of the season. He was a really good commit for Brett Bielema early in his tenure. And you beat Iowa for a running back, right? Like that is significant. It shows you how people thought of Aidan Laughery. I feel like he's somehow kind of like a little bit of the forgotten man here in terms of what he's done, especially to close the season. So I think those two can be good enough to vault you into that 4 to 6 range. And that's more than a compliment to a really good quarterback that we spent a half hour talking about, Jeremy. And so if those two are healthy, there's a lot there. And there's plenty of speed with Kaden Feagin to complement who's really, really fast Aidan Laughery.
The way I would say this is if these guys are fully healthy, they are potentially the two best weapons on this offense, right? Like they are
proven to this point. Yeah.
But I just think they could be. They're the best. Like I think Hudson Clement's a good player. Hank Beatty, Colin Dixon, Malik Elzy. These guys are going to have the ball in their hands the most, and they have shown already at this level that they can be playmakers. I'm just looking at any game that Kaden Feagin has had more than 10 carries. It's 85 yards, 84 yards, 97 yards, 89 yards, 108, 40, 25. He didn't have good games against Kansas, Central Michigan, but last year, 69, 64 against Nebraska and Penn State. This is a guy who can consistently get you 60 to 80 yards in a game, and he's a good receiver. Like he's a threat to get you 70 to 100 yards from scrimmage every game that he stays healthy. So if he can stay healthy, he's a guy who can give you 1,000 yards from scrimmage and give you a guy that gets the ball in the end zone once you're in the red zone. Something they're really going to miss with Josh McCray because that guy got you the ball in the end zone once you got in the red zone. And then Aidan Laughery, you see last year, and of course the Northwestern game is the big one we think about because, wow, look at all those breakaway runs. But just a guy who can give you those 10 to 30-yard chunks. And I think they can get him going in the passing game even more. 6.1 yards per carry last year. Again, Northwestern did some heavy lifting there, but it was consistent that he would have a few first down runs of 10-plus yards if he had 10-plus carries in a game. They're different, but they're very complementary. My questions with those guys is pass blocking. They need to take another step there. I think they can, especially Kaden Feagin. But if they're both healthy, I think these guys can combine for 120 to 150 yards and a touchdown or two most games. And that's a heck of a rushing attack.
Yeah, I think the thing with Kaden Feagin, this is probably a little elementary to say. We haven't seen the best of Kaden Feagin. Like if you look at when his injuries came the last 2 seasons, he's coming off a Penn State game. I mean, you put up 64 rushing yards against that Penn State defense. Like that's not going to wow when you're just passing through the box scores. But I thought he looked pretty good in that game. That was as good as he had started to look from a decision standpoint. And then he gets hurt. You go back to 2023, he's coming off that big game at Minnesota. You'll remember that catch and run, in which I think that was like a 23-mile-an-hour run. Mm-hmm. He gets hurt against Indiana. So it feels like when the ball started to get going downhill, he got hurt. So like, what does he look like when he's able to pick up momentum over the course of a game or of a season, I think that is really, really intriguing to me because we haven't seen that yet. We saw it a little bit, probably the most definitely in 2023, just because he had more games to stack up. But I'm really, really interested in what he can do when he starts getting that and feeling like, okay, yeah, I'm good here. And by the way, I'm a massive human being who can run really fast too.
Yeah, because
Aidan Loft,
his freshman year. Sorry, I wanted to talk about Kaden for a second. His freshman year, you looked at him and you're like, man, find a way to get that guy. He's going to find a way to get on the field at some point. And there was kind of a feeling out process of what is Big Ten football.
started happening against Kansas in that late in that blowout. In Lawrence, he started to get some carries, and you saw, whoa, all right, like
for his size, you get him to the second level, boy, is he a pain to bring down. And then he's got enough speed to run away from linebackers for sure. But if he's fully going, it's hard for a safety to catch up with him. It's just there's so much untapped talent that, yes, it doesn't feel like we've seen what Caden Feagin can be. And, every practice we seem to like run into Brett Bielema. It's look at Caden Feagin. He's just so excited about what he could be. So you hope you can get a full, healthy year out of him. Go ahead on Laughery.
Yeah, I think Laughery, you saw it against Northwestern in particular, and I was surprised when I dug into it a little bit more. He makes people miss. Like that is something, especially against Northwestern, you can almost still see him breaking through the line of scrimmage, and he's kind of one-on-one in that second with the second level defender, and he just makes a little move to make. And then when he's got some space, he's incredibly fast.
Yep.
So and I think against South Carolina, he had a season high and forced missed tackling 4-5. That is what you want out of Aidan Laughery, and then let that speed do the rest of the heavy lifting there. So yeah, they complement each other incredibly well. They just got to stay on the field. And Jeremy, we haven't even brought up Ca'Lil Valentine, who
we will. He's on. He's on.
Is that next? I
wanted to say that Aidan just gave you a little bit of what Chase gave you. Like Chase Brown is elite running back. He's going to start for the Cincinnati Bengals this year. We saw how good he was. Should have gotten probably some more Heisman consideration than he got that year. If Illinois would have closed the season a little bit better, I think he would have. But just that ability to get to the corner, get upfield, or get to that outside zone, turn it upfield, make a defender miss in that little zone, and then break away from a safety. Not going to be able to do it every time, right? Because there's good players on the other team too. But he just gives you that breakaway threat that he just didn't have, whether it was injury or confidence or vision or whatever it was, his first couple years. And that guys like Reggie Love and Josh McCray, like they just didn't have that gear to get to. Aidan showed you last year he's got that gear. The other guy who does is Ca'Lil Valentine. And that's our next question. How big of a leap can Ca'Lil Valentine make? Because without McCray, you need another running back there. He's a very different running back than McCray. But you saw those flashes, Joey, again, of like that ability to make a defender miss in that open field, but also get to the corner, turn it upfield. He just needs to be a little bit more versatile. Needs to pass block better, needs to be able to run between the tackles a little better.
Yeah, I don't know how much run between the tackles we will see of him this year, because if you're running between the tackles, I prefer Laughery and Feagin to do that. But Valentine's, he does have to ultimately add that to his game, and more time in a college weight strength program is going to help get him there. But if you want a guy to go get to the edge, turn it upfield and go, he's probably, he might be your best option. He's quick, he's fast, he got that shake a little bit. You saw that happen as a freshman. You don't need the world of him right now, right? He had 212 rushing yards last year. If your top two guys are healthy, can you get him in that 350 range? Can you just be that change of pace guy to come in and complement those two? Ideally, maybe you get him at close to 400, but you can just let him continue to ease into this. And as a pass blocker, as a receiver out of the backfield, all of those things. But he's got all the talent in the world. Thad Ward clearly is really, really fond of Ca'Lil Valentine, and he was a composite 4-star kid when they got him. So I think it's another year where you, if healthy, can ideally let him get his feet a little bit more wet and still maybe he can hit one for you, right? Maybe he can be a chunk guy a couple times, over the course of a few games.
Ca'Lil Valentine, when he got in here and you see him in person, it's like he's skinny. He's like 180 pounds for most people. Like he's in good shape, but like just for a running back in the Big Ten, he's a little thin, right? He's about 175, 180 pounds. Now they list him at 190. Thad said he was 200. I thought he looked like he was in the 190s still. So I still think there's a lot of strength gains to be made, but just the athleticism, the speed, the burst, the quickness, it's real. Like I do think at some point in his career, Ca'Lil Valentine has a chance to lead Illinois in rushing one of these years. And if Laughery got hurt, right, or one of these guys gets hurt, he's got to play a big role. So, well, I'd like to, ease him in, do a little bit more. He's got to be ready to handle a huge load because there's going to be at some point like an injury at that running back position. It's likely going to happen. It just happens at that running back position. He's in that rotation, and he could be a starter caliber, one of the top two guys quickly or at some point during the season.
Yeah, with running back, odds are someone's going to miss a couple series, someone's going to miss a couple quarters. Maybe you're out for a game, you're just questionable for a game, but really, they're probably not going to. That's running back. It's life of a Big Ten running back, and if and when that happens, Ca'Lil Valentine is suddenly looking at 14 carries a game, right? He's looking at a chance to come in there and make some of that big impact. And I'm with you. I think he does have it to go lead this team in rushing at some point in his career. If all things break right, you just don't need that to be right now. And you can let Kaden Feagin wear down a team and let Ca'Lil Valentine come in and hit the edge. You can let Aidan Laughery run through the tackles and get on the edge, and then let Ca'Lil Valentine really come in and try to make a big play. I think that's a good spot to be in. And look, maybe we're like underestimating what his impact is going to be this year. I just think if you're fully healthy, that's what Illinois needs out of him.
There's going to be a game we talk about him a lot. Like there's going to be a game. Like I can see him, I put him in my breakouts list because I do think there's going to be a game. Like he could run for 100 yards and be a huge, important player in a win. Because going into last year, did we think Josh McCray would do that? Like, did we know that Aidan Laughery would certainly be? It felt like he had the opportunity to be that. I think Ca'Lil now is one of those guys where it's like you're a couple snaps away from being one of the top running backs on this team. The concern I have with this group is they got to prove more as a pass blocking unit. We mentioned that before. I think Aidan's got to prove more. Khalil's definitely got to get better. Kaden, I think, has it in him. I mean, you should be good as a pass blocker at 6'3", 250 pounds. So I think his snap load will go way up because of that. But I do think there's still some untapped potential about using these running backs in the passing game, Joey. These are all good pass catchers. Like Ca'Lil even had, 6 catches last year for 30 yards or something like that. I think all of these guys can be dangerous in the passing game. So for a quarterback that might not, do I want to go to that guy down the field? Do I trust him to make that play? Going to the dump off to the running back sometimes could help.
That's a good tie into how we talked about how Luke Altmyer can improve, right? It's okay just to drop it off and let's see if one of those guys can get 5-6 yards, right, on a drop-off pass. But I do think that's something there, and something I'm glad you brought up because Josh McCray was so good as a pass catcher out of the backfield. Like we think about Josh McCray at the goal line, and he obviously was able to 10 rushing touchdowns last year. He was pretty good out of the backfield. We've seen Kaden Feagin do that, especially his freshman year as a guy. In fact, I think that may have been the Indiana game. He caught a pass, turned upfield. That may have been what ultimately ended up with the shoulder injury. I'm not trying to.
Obviously, everybody remembers the Minnesota catch and run.
That's right. Yeah. So like we've seen that.
We were sitting in the press box going, whoa, that he could do that.
He could do that. He was aided a little bit by maybe a poor route from the safety.
The linebacker was burned, but the safety, yes, did not take a good route. I think that was Justin Wally, too.
Who?
Justin Wally? There was like a really good Minnesota DB. I mean, Minnesota's got really good DBs.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. But obviously he still hit a pretty high speed and ran down that sideline. So I'm curious what they look like in terms of those, especially dump off, make a guy miss, barrel through a guy for a couple yards. I think that's an area that they can, that we don't talk about enough, that they can have an impact.
All right, Joey. One of the things we love doing, because obviously we hit the starters, you hit the backups, the key backups. The deep dives are some of my favorite thing to do. And this might be one of our times to shine. the fourth running back. This might be one of the most interesting conversations we have. Who is the fourth running back in this depth chart? We might have different answers here. I'll let you go first.
I don't think we have different answers. Because we talked about typically it's been a freshman, right? It's been Josh McCray, it's been Caden Feagin, it's been Ca'Lil Valentine. I think it's Aaron Ball. I think that is, I know it's his second year, right? Within the system.
Out of Burbank, right?
Yes, I have his he went to St. Lawrence.
Yeah.
So yeah. I think it might be him. He was a guy that like kind of a sneaky good walk-on get when they got him. Man, we are really, really in the deep cuts here. He rushed for
walk-ons may not matter in the future, but they matter. And Brett Bielema has elevated the walk-on program and getting a guy with some FCS offers. I like that get back in the day. South Dakota had offered, right? And a Western.
Yeah, South Dakota, Western Illinois. Rushed for more than 1,400 yards, 20 touchdowns as a senior. I think it's him. I think he is the fourth back. He's been in the system. Caden Feagin told me he kind of took him under his wing, took Aaron Ball under his wing in the spring. There's just something there. I think he moves pretty well. He's a guy who he's not a small guy. What's he listed at for Illinois?
5'11", 195.
Yeah, that's fine. I think it's we talked a lot about John Forrester. I think we talked a lot about Cedric Weish, and just because the freshman kind of history and the way that that's gone, then you get to see practices. It's like, okay, Laughery, Feagin, Valentine, okay. Oh, it's Aaron Ball as the fourth guy we've seen there. So I like that he's been in the system. I think he's talented. I'm leaning towards him.
I love it. He's a guy you and I maybe I've mentioned too many times. Like after my kind of like this kid. He had a pretty good spring from us. He got a lot of reps with Feagin out and all that. So this guy's been in the system, as you said, and there is talent there. John Forster, I think, would be the other guy that can be in the mix for this. But I'm going to go off the radar. I still think Jordan Anderson's in the mix here. You know, talking to Robbie Disher the other day, Anderson is working in at tight end. They're lining him up everywhere. He had a role in as a running back last year as kind of the short yardage guy. So it would not shock me if by the end of the year, Jordan Anderson had 10 to 15 carries. Might be for only 35 yards because they just need him to get a yard or two. But I still think he's going to play a role with this running back unit, whether it's because he's the H-back that gets the carry ahead of Feagin, like Anderson and Feagin in the backfield at the same time. Could be a lot of fun. Or if Feagin gets hurt, you need another short yardage guy. And Anderson at 6'2", 245 pounds, experience in the system. I think he's going to be a versatile chess piece for them. And I still think he's going to take some handoffs this year. So he's just a guy I don't want to overlook because he's not just a tight end. They're going to use him in a lot of interesting ways. H-back, fullback. If they got to put him as a running back because Feagin gets hurt, I still think he's going to play a role there.
Yeah, I see that. I'm with you on that. You know, that was the conversation when McCray transfers. Like, who's going to get the goal line carries? Like, well, Caden Feagin, one, and probably Caden Feagin, two. But don't overlook, Jordan Anderson's taken a lot of carries in his life. You don't just move to tight end and forget how to take a handoff at the goal line. So I am interested in how they use him and whether that's as an H-back or it's a true running back. Can you get a little bit creative in the way that you use him? I don't want to go as far as like Tyler Warren was used at Penn State. That's not a skill comparison. It's not a talent comparison. It's just I thought Penn State was very creative in the way that they used Tyler Warren in a lot of different ways. I don't know that it's going to be that.
Well, they could do that with Feagin. That's the guy.
Yeah.
I can see Feagin jumping over an offensive line at the goal line and being a crazy person.
But I think there's a lot of different places you can line Jordan Anderson up. So I do like that pick, but I think in terms of a traditional running back, I'm still leaning on Aaron Ball. But Anderson's role and how that is like not the thing we're talking about a lot or really even a little, but I am like that is going to be really fun to watch how that evolves over the course of the season and how they use him because physically he is an imposing guy and a guy that you would think that he has a role somewhere out there on the field. Just how much and how do they do it?
Yeah, I asked Robbie Disher about him yesterday. He said we've moved him around everywhere, on the ball, off the ball, in the backfield, in the slot. There's a lot of things he can do to help you. He's looked really good on special teams so far too. So really excited about Jordan. Just a guy I don't want to overlook because I do think he just brings a really interesting skill set. And boy, Bielema loves storyline. So at some point, they're going to put Feagin and Anderson together in the backfield so the broadcast can go crazy and be like, that's a quarter ton of running back in the backfield there. Yeah, they're going to love that.
And just run into like Luke Altmyer on a goal line or something, just both of them push, do something absurd. I do, and I don't know, maybe I'm mentally making this connection because they're very close friends and came in together. But Malachi Hood was a guy we weren't talking a lot about last season. And all of a sudden, it's like, hey, there's a role for him. His was significant, aided by probably some injuries and a creative use of sub packages. But maybe Jordan Anderson's that guy where you don't talk about him for a couple of years. He's had some injuries, then sub packages on offense or creative ways to use him. You start to see a little bit more of a role evolve for him. Now, this is his fourth year.
Yeah, I was just about to say, it's fun seeing some of these guys who were in that first recruiting class, some of the in-staters who didn't play right away. And even going into last year, did we think Malachi Hood was going to be here? Right? Did we think
Malachi Hood didn't think he was going to play a lot last year? Archie McDaniel told us he just wanted to run on special teams and travel. And he ended up with a pretty significant role by the end of the season.
Did we know if Jordan Anderson would want to go through another year at Illinois when Caden Feagin and
had a position switch?
Yeah, Ca'Lil Valentine and threw a position switch. Like, is he going to stick through that? Hank Beatty going into last year. We're like, where's this guy find a role on a team that Colin Dixon beat him out for the slot spot and Isaiah Williams was so good. And he gets on punt return, and all of a sudden that translates to confidence elsewhere. So to see some of those in-staters who started this thing, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool that they can make an impact, even if it's in these smaller roles. Like Malachi Hood is, your dime linebacker. Jordan Anderson is this crazy H-back. And Hank Beatty is a punt returner that is a rotational slot player. It's cool to see those guys make an impact on the program because that's what they wanted to do. They want to make an impact and help Illinois win games. And even if it's in smaller roles, they're finding a way, man.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that it's not everything is you're the starting or star at X, Y, or Z position, that you can find a role within what Illinois wants to do and have a big moment to win a game or to help lead your team to a win.
And Robbie Disher would say all of those guys are incredibly important on their special teams core 4 units, right? They're all playing those special teams, and that plays a big role. But yeah, you forget that Jordan Anderson had some big carries. Like, he had a carry for 2 yards to get a first down against South Carolina, did the same against Minnesota, did the same against Northwestern. So there were some big, like, short yardage moments. He came into games and got you some conversions, and that helps you win games, man.
Well, that's the thing. You're not going to note, like, you see that in a box score. It's not going to matter. But I think to Jay Lehman's hidden yards, right? Like, just moving the sticks, giving Luke Altmyer a chance to throw the ball again, giving the chance to give it to last season with Josh McCray and Aidan Laughery. That stuff, when you're watching a game, you can feel the importance of those moments. And even though the numbers aren't incredibly big, I think creativity with Jordan Anderson, I think just those key third downs, get your big guy back there and convert. That is what we're going to be talking about a lot. And those roles, when you're a team in the margins, that extra first down matters.
Any final thoughts on the running backs here, Joe?
No, I got nothing. I keep coming. If this group is healthy, I wonder. I think it can be really, really good. And I think it can be in that 4 through 6 range in the Big Ten.
I think all of these guys, if they had 250 to 300 touches, and 250 touches, I'll say, I think all these guys have all Big Ten potential behind this offensive line with the talent they have. It's just, how are those reps going to be split? I could see Caden Feagin rushing for 1,000 yards. I could see Aidan Laughery rushing for 1,000 yards. At some point in his career, I could see Ca'Lil Valentine doing that. I also could see, if they just stay healthy, Kaden and Aidan both rushing for 800 yards and being great, right? And being a great rushing attack for this team. So I feel good about it as long as they do stay healthy. It's the biggest caveat of this group. And then if they don't, Ca'Lil Valentine's growth is incredibly, incredibly important.
Yeah, and not to get ahead of a later pod, but I'd like to see the offensive line come out and move people early and move people effectively and give those guys as good of a chance as they can have to put up some of those yards, and especially in your kind of stat padding games, right? Your Western Illinois, to a degree, Western Michigan. That is also the thing we do have to address. We'll talk about it more on the offensive line pod, but yeah, those guys need to have a fast start and open the door for those backs.
Feagin, Laughery, 100-yard games against Western. I can see that.
Each? Yes. That's what I don't. Western Illinois is not going to be a lesson in creativity for the Illinois offense or defense, right? It's going to be.
I am not expecting a huge day for Altmyer. I mean, he could throw for 300 yards if they really wanted to, but I'd be fine just handing those two the ball and getting my offensive line moving and sit Altmyer by halftime. That'd be nice.
For the sickos who stuck around an hour and listened to us talk, who are your feed the stats guys against Western Illinois?
It'd be the running backs. Yeah,
you don't want to try to get like
Ca'Lil a lot of reps in the second half. I think would be really important.
Ca'Lil, you don't want to try to like force feed Malik Elzy
for sure. Yes, I want to gain confidence.
That's what I mean. Who are your build confidence guys in a game that you should, let's be honest, win pretty comfortably?
First play of the game, deep ball, Malik Elzy. Is that what we're doing?
Or Bowick or something.
I go Elzy.
I just mean like
I do think Elzy and Valentine would be the two guys. My answer, because I think Feagin and Laughery, I don't know if they need that. Like Feagin just to get going would be nice, but Elzy and Valentine would be the two guys. I think it's important to get them some good reps and some confidence in that game.
Feagin's the guy for me because I could see Brett Bielema wanting his first game back and just put up 100 rushing yards. And even though I think a lot of us would say, yeah, I mean, he put up 100 against Western, I think it's very meaningful for a guy coming off the last 2 years to feel that rush of success again. So he would be, I think it's Elzy and Feagin for me in terms of just let these guys put up some stats.
Yeah, for sure. And those are two of your biggest recruiting wins, both in the same class, two in-state guys. You'll have to go recruit off of that as well. So it makes a lot of sense. All right, that'll do it for us. We have daily updates at IlliniInquirer.com. Go check that out. Speaking of the offensive line, but some injuries on that. We've written about that the last couple of days. You can check all that out at IlliniInquirer.com. Been doing training camp coverage a little bit differently. We're doing basically one big download. So you guys don't have to click on 4 different links to read everything that we're hearing and seeing during camp. And so you can just go every day. We'll have a huge update from training camp with many different storylines. I hope you're enjoying that. And if you're not a VIP member right now, it's a great time to sign up. 50% off a VIP membership at IlliniInquirer.com. Thank you for listening to the Illini Inquirer podcast. Give us a rating, review, follow wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on YouTube as well. Hit that like button if you're on YouTube right now. Click the subscribe to us. Hit that notifications bell as well. Everybody have a good day. I'm Jeremy Werner. He's Joey Wagner. We'll talk to you next time on the Illini Inquirer podcast.